Hallo Lisa.
Hi, Cathrin.
Grüß
How are
dich.
you?
Hi, nice to see you. New week, new topic. And we just decided we will make a summer break in August. So this week, the two Get Mindful talks are our last two talks before we will get into a short summer break over August. So last week we had the topic of stress, and we did the differentiation that there is the positive stress which keeps us in this let's do it modus, and we get things done and we are not struggling anymore with our plate full of tasks. But then there's also this kind of too much stress, which then gets into negative stress, which keeps us awake in the night. And this negative stress can, in an extreme form or when it's over a very long period, lead to very intense feelings. And when we like always have this feeling we are behind and we are running and running but never get it done, and there's always like the mountain of tasks in front of us is always just getting bigger, or at least keeps its height, but it's not getting smaller. And this stress can really occur a lot of not only intense but also unpleasant feelings, as we name them, and make us sad, make us frustrated, leads to disappointment, and also, yeah, to this opposite of let's do it, like to this, oh no, it's all just too much. And therefore today's topic is emotional heaviness, because we want to talk about these like consequences of just too much negative stress. So how can we, yeah, is it kind of group of feelings? How can we name these feeling, or what belongs to emotional heaviness?
Well, I think, if I think of emotional heaviness, I think of anything around sadness, as you said before, any feeling of depression, or even if it's, there's major depression, which can stretch over years, months at any rate. And then we have these depressive times where we feel kind of, I think, overwhelmed by the situation. So I think sadness, overwhelm, depressive feelings, this kind of feeling of heaviness, this, we know the way our bodies feel. You have this weight on, carrying kind of the weight of the world on your shoulders. Just this feeling of lack of energy, this perhaps even disinterest in your environment, in your work, in your family, in the things that you normally love to do. I think these sorts of things often grow out of this negative stress that you were talking about, because it just gets too much. We stop seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. We're suffering, we may suffer from insomnia, and you just simply this feeling of, oh, it's just too much to carry, and we don't see that way out.
Yeah.
And I think these are the feelings that
Yeah.
we can address today.
Yeah, absolutely. That is a perfect explanation. I think this heaviness many people can relate to, and it doesn't even matter where it comes from, if it's coming from job issues or issues with your partner or with your kids, or the combination of it all, so that you can't get it solved, and when you are solving one, then it's lacking at the other side. I guess this heaviness describes by this general feeling of just too much. And so when I'm in this situation, where do we start to feel the feeling? Because we know from our earlier Get Mindful talks, and our listener know it's so important to allow also the unpleasant guests to be there. But when it's like just all too much, and on the one hand we also know the advice of, yeah, just let it, just do it or just get it done, then it might be that, that it's the more important step in this situation of really the emotional heaviness, to allow yourself a break and to stop and to feel the feelings. But like, where do we start to get into it, to discover what are the feelings within us? Because as you also did your body language, it's feeling always like a lot on the shoulders, but then you want to get into the body, right? And
right. I think every person feels this a little bit different. I mean, I'm very familiar with these feelings. This was, I was raised by a mother who suffered from a lot of depression and a lot of anxiety and a lot of these feelings of heaviness. And this is the way that I would have described it. For me, was this, and maybe this heaviness on my chest, just this inability almost to breathe, just like this suffocating, there's just this fog that would settle down over me. And I think for each person, it manifests differently in their bodies. But I think it's very important to get in contact with that feeling and to really get to know that feeling, and to, through the familiarity with the feeling, we lose our fear of the feeling, or we lose perhaps our distaste of the feeling. Because when we're afraid of the feeling, or when we don't want the feeling, we turn away from it and we try to push it away. This should not be here, this is wrong, this feeling should not be here. And this feeling of this feeling should not be here is much worse than the feeling itself. And I think this is the most important message for us. And that's why I think it's so important for us to get in contact with that physicality of it. What does it feel like? What does my depression feel like? And make friends with that. To make friends with it, to allow it just to be. And then from within that, I think this acceptance, and acceptance always sounds so passive, and I don't mean it passively at all. This is active. I am actively accepting these feelings of heaviness. As soon as I've reached that point, these feelings of heaviness begin to transform. They begin to change for the better.
Yeah. Because what you just said, like this feeling should not be here, this could also lead to that you kind of structure your daily life differently, so that you maybe kind of get better in refusing that this feeling comes up. But as soon as it gets busy again, then might be very quickly this feeling again of, just too much, and where should I start, and heaviness. And I think this is what you want to address, that this should not be here, is not the long-term solution, not the long-term acceptance of the feeling.
Exactly. And what's funny, last week we spoke of this busyness, this, doing so much and just having so much to do. And I think we tend to run away from our heavy feelings through intense busyness.
Mm-hmm.
We can get all caught up in doing, so we don't have to feel these uncomfortable feelings. So we run away through busyness, or we fall back into a type of comatose paralysis. We can do nothing. That's sometimes, a symptom of this heaviness, or grows out of this heaviness, that we become unable to do anything.
Yeah.
And so we're kind of, and then that's not comfortable either. Then we're afraid of the inactivity, and we get too stressed out from the overactivity.
Yeah.
And so I think we tend to sometimes kind of, either we tend to one type of personality or the other, or we kind of jump between the polarities of doing way too much and then getting stressed out, and then these feelings of heaviness coming because the stress just comes and comes and comes and comes, and we start losing sleep and this kind of stuff, and then we get this heaviness because we lose the sensation of space, you know, and so we fall into perhaps this heaviness. And I think a lot of the times this happens to us because we identify ourselves with our busyness, you know, with I am what I do. And if I do things productively, or if I feel productive, or I feel like I'm contributing, or I feel like I'm doing something, I have a better self feeling, you know, I feel better about myself. And then this panic comes, though perhaps maybe it's not true, you know, maybe this is, and then this depression comes, it becomes too much, and then we sink into this feeling of I'm not good enough. And I think these heavy feelings tend to be around that, because we're so afraid, or we tend to believe we are what we work, we are what we do. And so if I can't do anything and I'm in this depression, then I lose my whole value, because we have difficulty finding value in just being.
Yeah.
I think we spoke about this in
some
detail.
Yeah, and it's great to that you like close the loop to get back on this. What you've also mentioned is this getting to the sensation of space. Tell us what is behind this. Is it like creating this space also by breathing and space for this feeling?
Yes, exactly. I mean, we come back, I think, to that again and again, and we get all caught up in the feeling, or all caught up in the thoughts, and you know, our focus becomes very narrow. We go, ooh, and we're into that suffering. And if we can kind of find a space around the suffering, you know, like putting a space around the thoughts, and just kind of open up to that space that's around the thought, or the space that is around the heaviness, and realize that that space is who we really are. You know, space is just this openness, and this space allows that heavy feeling, or this space allows that unhappiness, or that fear, or that anxiety. And somehow that feeling just becomes cradled in that space, and doesn't seem nearly as overwhelming anymore. It's just there, just as everything is there. And we know intellectually every nasty feeling will have a beginning, a middle, and an end. But sometimes when we're stuck in the middle of it, we can't see that anymore.
Yeah, and especially because I like a lot, like you did, just like the chain, like we have a feeling what we doesn't want to feel, so we tend to be either very busy or to this unable to do anything. Then when we are very busy, the stress gets more and more and more, and the heaviness gets more and more, so that we feel overwhelmed. And then we have this like emotional heaviness, what we are feeling. And then when we are in this, when we are feeling, oh, it's just too much, then I would say these are the moments where we forget that this feeling is also going, because it feels like the mountain of tasks in front of us is just too big, and we can't see that we are getting over it. And in this moment, normally these are the moments where we are so stressed, where we are badly connected with ourselves, and therefore we can, or at least I know that we kind of forget this. This what we experienced maybe already before, that all has a beginning, stays for a while, and then it comes to an end. But is it like for accepting the feeling, like going into the dialogue with yourself, or like, okay, you are feeling overwhelmed, I can see this task and this situation, and maybe this conflict with a friend or whatever, because often it's just not just one thing. It's often a combination that in different areas of your life there's a lot of going on, and then you have this overwhelming feeling it's just getting too much. Like, instead of sorting it out one by another, allowing the feeling, but then seeing, like, looking at the like sources for the stress, or more like, okay, I'm stressed because, and you named it, because I'm feeling not good enough, and yeah, maybe I'm realizing that I'm this type of person that I define myself about what I'm working or what I'm doing. And then is it like the like what are the tiny steps within the accepting? Is it like saying, oh, I know this comes from my childhood because my parents have been this and that, or is it like giving it names, like, yeah, you're not feeling good enough, or but this is just a thought, like what are the tiny steps within the accepting?
Yeah. Well, what you're describing now is a mental process. You know, that's an analysis, and there's some value to that, of course. And we're always going to have some mental processes around our suffering. I think primarily the most important step is to really just the physical sensation of feeling, you know, because that's what we're actually running away from. We're running away. We don't want to have that feeling. And the outward situation is just triggering that feeling. And so we close down because of the feeling, not because of the outside situation, because of the many things to do or whatever. Stress is always, you know, this inside job, and unhappiness is an inside job, and depression is an inside job. And then we get all upset about that actual physical sensation.
Mm-hmm.
Rarely really take the time to just feel that physical sensation. It's like you know, when maybe in childhood, in our teenage years, there was a certain song that was connected to your first kiss or your first date or something really nice. And so every time you play that song, you think of that moment, and it's a good feeling. But this, what's happening in your body is similar, but it's this negative. So you feel that feeling, and it immediately causes all these negative thoughts. So I think the process is a little bit like we could play that record to death. We could play that song to death and break the connection to those memories, to those positive thoughts. We can also do the same with our bodies. We just feel that feeling so long without thinking the thoughts, that we make the connection between that physical feeling and those depressing or sad or heavy thoughts. And this is a process of really feeling that feeling, you know, going into your hotel and just really feeling that feeling as if you were playing that song to death. And you just feel it and feel it. And each time you go into those thoughts, that you just come back down to the feeling. I would say this is the most essential aspect of that work. It's really this embodied being kind of thing, because this is what increases our tolerance to being ourselves, you know. And for me, it's like, I think over the years, I've simply increased my tolerance to being me. And I haven't changed that much, but then maybe I have, you know, from the outside. I'm a lot nicer. I'm a lot less afraid of being myself. And through the loss of being afraid of being yourself, you just become much more comfortable.
Yeah.
For yourself and for others. So I think that's the first thing, is to increase your actual tolerance to that physical sensation without allowing those thoughts to trigger, or the thoughts come, and then to return to the physical aspect of it. And then, of course, to some degree, there's going to be an intellectual process, because we're not, you know, we are intellectual.
Yeah.
And I can do that, but consciously. No, I'm doing it. It's not that important where the feeling came from, or where the thoughts come from, or what the source is. The most important aspect is dealing with it. learning new way of dealing with your depression or dealing with your sadness or dealing with those feelings of overwhelm. Because if you deal with it the same way that you've always been dealing with it, you're always going to get the same results. And you'll keep the same relationship to it. And that's the problem, is our relationship to these feelings.
Yeah. Yeah, and this can even more trigger the spiral. Like when you are like trying to solve it, and then you are finding yourself back at the same point, or even worse, because you're thinking, oh no, I tried, but then it's still there, kind of.
Yeah, because you insightfully said, everything has an end. Everything will indeed pass. But either I can allow this feeling its natural lifespan, or I can perpetuate it by thinking about it all the time and running away from it. Whatever I run away from that's going to stick to me like Velcro.
Yeah. So just to phrase it slightly differently, but with like playing the song to death, like feeling the feeling, would it be like, instead of feeling it and tending to analyze it while whatever, always, like in the meditation, like always getting back to the focus object, always getting back to the feeling, and then, okay, I'm feeling whatever in my chest, but then, okay, but it was really a hard working day. Okay, coming back to the feeling. Oh, but my kids. Okay, coming back to the feeling. But in my childhood, I also know my parents were stressed or whatever. Okay, get back to the feeling. It's kind of this, right?
Oh, back and forth. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
In particular, you feel the feeling, and then you immediately jump up into the thoughts again. And then you catch yourself, and you come back down. Then you go, yeah, but that's really, back to the feeling. And so it's a back and forth all the time. And the more you do this, the more stable you become in your focus to remain in the body. And this is kind of what we're talking about anyway. This is what we come back to again and again and again. What we're doing is learning how to focus, where we'd like to focus, or to learn how to notice when we're dysfunctionally thinking. And options.
Yeah, but I like so much to come always back on this and to always get a level deeper, because I think also from the experience, that it's still, as we said, something different when we understand on the intellectual level, but then like doing it or feeling it or making the experiences, and also like I love this example with, just let go. Okay, but when I like, let go away, then it's like, again, this resistance, which makes it worse. And that letting go is also accepting, and accepting is like more inviting, and letting go for me, it seems more like go away. And so I for me, really the truth lies in the little details.
Yeah. Totally. I agree with you. It's like this intellectual understanding comes very quickly. I think everything that we talk about, it sounds very logical. It's very rational. Nothing that you have to believe in. You hear it and you go, well, yeah, okay. I can understand that. But then actually doing it is something completely different. And then years, that's the practice of our life, is, I suppose, is to keep remembering and then to keep doing. Because to be, to have the focus in the mind is, that's kind of our default. And it's not healthy.
Yeah.
And so
we are all in our default mode, right?
Absolutely. So we come back to it again and again and again, and it's always the same thing. I think the two of us over pretty soon, close to 30 talks, we haven't said, we always come back to the same, to this topic. We just, it's different words and maybe organized a little bit different, but we're always talking about the same thing.
Yeah. But exactly. But that makes it so interesting, and especially talking about these heavy feelings, these emotional heaviness, these big feelings, like when it's tending into depression, that we won't deal differently with it, even if it's like a very very heavy topic. Maybe or likely it will take some more time, right?
Yeah, I mean, speaking from my own experience, because depression and anxiety were frequent guests in my hotel. You know, I literally did suffer from them for years. And all during that time, there was resistance to it. This should not be that way, and I don't want to feel this, and this has to go away. And then hearing the teachings and starting to work with the Dharma, and then kind of in the beginning it was, yes, but if I accept this, then it will stay.
Mm-hmm.
And it will always be
yeah.
that.
Yeah.
This was the next resistance to actually just feeling it. And intellectually, I think I understood the process and I understood the rationality behind it. But then the doing of it, that kind of came with time. But the more you do it, each little tiny step, every time you can stay with that feeling, with the physicalness of that feeling for 1 nanosecond longer than you did before, you're that much more liberated.
Yeah.
So it's not like, it's not 0 to 100, it's not an on-off switch. So it's not a digital kind of thing. It's very analog. We liberate ourselves kind of in steps.
Yeah.
And the practice, and you just have to keep doing it. And this doing it becomes, that becomes kind of the fabric of your life.
Yeah. And would you also say, similar to like meditation, you don't have to sit down to meditate, you can also do it by walking, etc., that this also applies for feeling the feelings, right?
Absolutely. It's an everyday job. It's just part of everyday life. Of course, sitting and meditating is very helpful, and I would recommend it for most people because I think it does us good and it helps us embrace the sacred nothing, how to do nothing. And this is a very important skill to develop, is to increase our tolerance to non-busyness.
Mm-hmm.
And to find our self-value outside of what we do, to get in contact with this value of just being. And so from that, I think it's very important. For some people, I think it's not going to happen right now. So, meditation can happen in any activity, because meditation simply means, being in the here and now, kind of getting in contact with that space that we referred to before.
Yeah, and therefore also for the feeling, right? When we have, oh my God, it's just overwhelming, that it could be very helpful when in this moment we take a second or a couple of seconds to get into our body and to feel where we can feel it, and not like to postpone it. But now it's around lunchtime and tomorrow morning I have my 10 minutes meditation, then I will deal with it.
Yeah,
that's what I wanted to give this.
I think that's very important. I think that's true, because I think irrelevant what we're doing, we can do that and be in contact with our feelings at the same time.
Yeah.
Because that's just the feelings that we're having is just what's unfolding right now in the here and now. That's just what is. When we talk about the here and now, we say be in contact with whatever's happening. We tend to push that and say that's just applies to the external world. Mm-hmm. And I have to accept the things that are happening outside of me. But the same thing applies to my reaction to it, or to the feelings that I'm having at the moment. That's also just what's happening right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
I can see the whole thing as a banquet. That's a package deal.
Yeah.
That's what's happening out there and what's happening inside of me, and that's kind of what's happening right now.
Yeah, and therefore it matters, not only in the here and now, not only what's happening outside, but especially what happens.
Totally. Oh yeah. Oh goodness. Yeah.
Great. Okay, let us stop or come to an end for this talk with this wonderful sentence what you just said. So important that the here and now is not only determined by the external things which are happening, but also by the internal. And let me try to quickly summarize what we've said about emotional heaviness. The good news are that we will continue with the second talk on this topic in German, so because there's much to say. But where we started is that often too much negative stress over a too long period can lead to emotional heaviness, which brings us the feeling of just too much, and this heaviness which we might feel on our shoulders, that we have to hold the weight of the whole world. And what helps us to deal with the emotional heaviness is to accept the feeling, and not in the way of pushing it away, and this feeling should not be here, because this is kind of the opposite of accepting, but accepting it in an active way, and to feel where we can feel it in our body, and not to attend too much to analyze it, the feeling, or why it's there, or why we feel this emotional heaviness, but really to get back to the body and the feeling itself, and also to kind of accept that there is that there is a back and forth, that also when we kind of once overcome the stress, it's not like, okay, there will be no stress anymore in your life. It can be back and then going again, instead of the mental analytical process, into really the physical feeling, and to allow yourself to take the time for feeling it. And then, like, it's not all bad about the analytical process, you can also do it on top, but that's not the key point of accepting the feeling. And also in the accepting process, allowing yourself that it's going back and forth, that you make progress, but then that you are again feeling this feeling, maybe even stronger. And by doing this accepting, it will increase your tolerance for yourself, for just being yourself. And the less you're afraid then of being yourself, the more you get comfortable with yourself. And this brings this long-lasting deliberation.
Exactly.
Exactly. That's it for today about emotional heaviness. Thank you so much, and talk to you soon. Bye-bye, Lisa.